So welcome back, everybody. And today we're going to be looking at theories and models for health promotion and changing nutritional behavior. And this topic might be new to some of you, while others you might find it as a refresher if you might have taken medical nutrition therapy. And also, when we consider program planning, using some of these theories and models, and especially, one thing to kind of keep in mind when we talk about community health interventions, your community members are partners and in the program rather than just recipients. And oftentimes it's stated that they are receiving education. But when we view the community's participation in these programs on a broader scale, they are actually partners. And this is an important perspective to maintain. So let's say if you're working at the YWCA or the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club, how are they responding? They are partners in your education as you teach them about healthy eating and physical activity. And so it's a complete circle rather than just passively receiving it. And when we talk about theory, it essentially explains or describes specific events related to nutrition. And we won't look into nutrition theories today, but they provide a different lens and they give us various perspectives. For instance, when we design programs for different population groups, such as high school students, seniors, families, or young adults at for example, the YWCA, we need to kind of consider how these topics, maybe for example, like sugar beverages, might be relevant to them. How do their understandings differ? Let's say if you're at a YWCA and they have a class for Hispanic population, and you just get high school kids, young mothers, young families, and even like older adults. So how are you going to explain how these beverages affect your bodies? And so providing different viewpoints and understanding is crucial. And most effective programs are based on theories, evidence-based practices, models, and theories. And when we examine these program models, we view them through an evidence-based lens. We have various kinds of models: physical, symbolic, and mental. And when we consider the physical model, it's essentially an observable replica of a real structure. For instance, food models from the food lab is a tangible example. And when teaching middle schoolers, using these models can be effective. Therefore, we need to kind of explore physical ways to model ideas and theories. Symbols are another option, conveying messages to those who recognize them. For example, no smoking signs or gluten-free labels in restaurants are common symbols we encounter, and they serve as visual cues for certain concepts or actions. Lastly, the mental model conveys an idea rather than a tangible image. For instance, when discussing nutrition, it holds different meanings for different groups. If you ask 50 people what nutrition means, you'll likely get 50 different answers. Similarly, the concept of wellness varies from person to person. For some, it's actually not feeling sick, while for others, it's about physical fitness, like running a marathon. And so understanding these differences will help us convey real world concepts effectively. And these are just some of the theories and models that we're going to cover in today's lecture. First, we have the social ecological model, which is quite comprehensive. And also, while there are so many other models out there, I've chosen these 5 as they are particularly very relevant to this course. And you may have heard of 1 or 2 of them already, or perhaps you're familiar with all of them. But regardless, we'll briefly go through each theory. And these are the ones that you also kind of need to focus on for your exams. And if you're interested in additional reading, I have provided some extra websites that you can actually go through. And your textbook also serves as a valuable resource for further information. So we can start off with the health belief model. And this model is actually based on individual beliefs. And it kind of breaks it down into perception. So how does someone perceive their susceptibility to a particular topic, for example? Because not everything is about a specific condition or disease. For example, we can talk about the perceived severity of a disease or condition and what someone's perception about that severity might be. Next, we can consider the perceived benefits of making a change and how that might benefit them. Essentially, when we look at their perception, it is based on facts, or sometimes it might not necessarily be. Then we have to look into also perceived barriers, examining the obstacle and also barriers to behavioral change. For instance, when reviewing and navigating through something like COVID-19 during that lockdown period, we need to consider how people are coping and what information they are hearing. Is it accurate? Is it evidence-based? How are we going to decrease the risk of contracting COVID-19 during that lockdown period, for example? What is the perceived impact if someone were to contract COVID-19? What are the perceived benefits of isolation and, for example, getting the vaccine? And what are the perceived barriers to getting vaccinated? So there are a whole lot of barriers to getting vaccinated, but they can be categorized into this health belief model. With the health belief model, we really emphasize the perceived threat as the motivating force to the perceived benefits. Essentially, we aim to motivate individuals, for example, to quit smoking by highlighting how it can prevent cancer and save lives. People can take action to avoid illness. So, for instance, in Malaysia, the cigarette boxes will display graphic images of diseased lungs and respiratory systems in an attempt to deter buyers from actually buying it. And also, while the taxes are increased with an increased tax on like a pack of cigarettes, the pictures actually didn't necessarily deter people from buying cigarettes, especially for chain smokers. However, for those who were just starting to smoke, these images could serve as a deterrent. And when considering taking actions, individuals must perceive themselves as susceptible to the condition and believe that the recommended action is feasible and effective. They also need to believe in the ability to successfully perform the recommended behavior. Motivational interviewing plays a significant role in encouraging this belief. There are many examples of using the health belief model to emphasize the threat as a motivating force, but it's crucial to consider the target population. For chain smokers, changing behavior can be extremely challenging, whereas for those who just are starting to smoke, these graphic images may serve as a deterrent. And so this model really kind of highlights the importance of understanding the audience and tailoring interventions accordingly. And so this is actually from your supplementary reading. And I incorporated this visual to illustrate how everything fits together. For instance, let's consider obesity. And we can educate individuals about the risk factor associated with obesity and highlight the benefits of increasing physical activity and adopting healthy diets, and discuss the potential effects of managing diabetes. Also, we can engage individuals in discussions about potential barriers they may face, such as limited access to exercise facilities and healthy food options. And you can also refer to your textbook for more examples. And the next theory that we're going to be looking at is the knowledge, attitude, and behavior model. And this model emphasizes the practical application of knowledge and is evidence-based. For instance, providing a list of good sources of calcium or maybe public announcements about the importance of calcium can motivate individuals concerned about osteoporosis. The key here is to make the information engaging and beneficial to the individuals. When considering attitudes, we aim to increase awareness and capture attention through various methods, such as passive means, kind of like watching television, or active means such as interactive workshops. And it's crucial to integrate beliefs about the consequences of actions, like how sodium intake relates to high blood pressure. And that could be used to kind of enhance motivation for people to reduce their sodium intake. However, if you're talking about memorization, that's not a good route. It's not effective. For instance, expecting a teenager to memorize a list of calcium sources to prevent osteoporosis may not yield any result. And instead, we should focus more on application, understanding how calcium relates to osteoporosis and other health conditions. And now we can look at the social learning theory. And it goes by various names, but its core principle remain consistent. So it's also known as your social cognitive theory or the social influence theory. And basically, the social learning theory emphasizes the interactive nature of cognitive and personal factors with environmental events in shaping behavior. It is based on reciprocal determinism, which highlights how behavior is influenced by the interaction among three elements: the individual, their behavior, and the environment. For example, consider someone living in an inner city area who wishes to obtain fresh produce daily. Despite their desire and motivation, their environment may pose challenges in accessing fresh fruits and vegetables. Factors such as location, income level, and availability of grocery stores impact their ability to fulfill this behavior. So thus, understanding the relationship between the individual, the behavior, and the environment is crucial in determining outcomes. When examining the social learning theory, we encounter three key constructs, which is the behavioral capacity, efficacy expectations, and also the outcome expectations. Behavioral capacity refers to having the skills necessary to perform a behavior. Efficacy involves beliefs regarding one's ability to successfully execute a behavior. Outcome expectations pertain to the beliefs regarding the anticipated effects of performing a behavior. And these constructs are interconnected, with each one building upon the other to shape behavior. So I'm not sure if anybody has kind of seen this tool before, and it's called the readiness ruler. Maybe you might have learned this in your MNT, but basically it's a way of assessing someone's readiness for change. This is something when I was discussing with the WIC director, and she mentioned that it's somewhat old-fashioned, but still used here in America. For example, when counseling families, they used to provide them with this ruler and ask them to set a goal. Then they would gauge their readiness when kind of using this ruler. How likely are they to, for example, exclusively breastfeed for the next few months? When talking about change, it's crucial to understand why it's important to make this change, how confident they feel about making the change, and if they're ready for it. From case studies, they found that it was effective, especially when working closely with a small community and getting to know the families well. Another example that I can give you is if you're working together with a person who may suffer from diabetes, where they wanted to increase physical activity and monitor their blood sugar levels. They could use this readiness ruler to assess their likelihood of starting and adopting this new behavior. So it's all about goal setting and understanding where they are on the readiness scale to make any nutritional intervention effective. And this tool can actually be effective in future interventions as it helps engage participants in the goal setting process. And then we have the trans-theoretical stages of change model, which I hope you'll be somewhat familiar with. When we talk about the stages, we have to remember that health behavior change is gradual, continuous, and dynamic. The stages are about identifying and acknowledging that there's a problem, and it's all about moving forward, even if sometimes there are setbacks. So, for example, if someone is overweight and wants to become more physically active, they have to start somewhere in their exercise routine. Sometimes they might be actively engaging in workouts for the first few weeks, but then they might fall back into old habits. The key is to keep moving forward. And this model recognizes that people go through 5 different stages. And while they may sometimes regress, programs are more effective when they're designed to match the individual stage in the change process. So, as you assess and engage with community members, you start by assessing how ready they are to change, and then you can tailor your interventions accordingly. And during my time in Japan, One important issue that came up was the need for older adults in rural areas to stay active. While Japan is generally safe, especially in rural areas, many adults rely on cars because walking can be impractical. And they wanted to encourage older adults to stay active by making parks more accessible. So one solution they considered was modifying sidewalks to include bicycle paths so that older adults could cycle safely. And you might think, oh, this is not possible, but with the kind of active lifestyles, especially in the rural areas where most of them work on farms, um, even when they're 80, 90, you could still see them cycling. However, with that said, there were discussions about who would fund these modifications, whether it would be the entire community or the local government. And so for the elderly community engaged in agriculture, which we know that agriculture isn't really highly profitable, investing in infrastructure like bicycle paths, if you're kind of relying on the community to provide these funds, can be a real challenge. And so again, this kind of like discussions that they were having really highlights the importance of understanding the readiness of communities to change and adapt these interventions accordingly. And when we look into the stages of change model, there are 5 stages. So first we have the pre-contemplation, where individuals have no intention to change their behavior. They are not thinking about it, nor do they want to do anything about it. And so there's no plan in place. Then when we look at contemplation, individuals have the intention to change, but there are no specific plans for the future. It's more of an idea, and preparation is needed. And when we move on to the preparation stage, these individuals have a plan for the immediate future. They might take some initial steps towards change. And usually the action stage will occur within a 6 months time frame where individuals have started to change their behavior, but it's still relatively new and the behavior might not be consistent. Finally, we have maintenance, where individuals have consistently maintained a behavioral change for an extended period, typically longer than 6 months. At this stage, healthier lifestyles become integrated into their daily routines, requiring less intentional effort. So this is actually another way to kind of look at it, perhaps a little bit simpler. It's more like a continuous loop, depicted in circles with these arrows, kind of indicating a dynamic process. And something to remember is that it's not always linear. Sometimes something might trigger a setback, and that's normal. In this process, there are different stages. For instance, in the pre-contemplation stage, you educate them about obesity and the role of exercise, helping them identify their barriers and how to increase physical activity. And if you move on to the contemplation stage, they can start considering making these changes. And next is preparation, where they plan for these immediate changes to happen. And so, using a peer support system, reminder cues or rewards to kind of keep them motivated. And then comes the action, where they actually make that change and they are confident enough to maintain that change. And where they can sustain those change. And so when we move into the maintenance stage, that is really where they can sustain those changes and expand their activities. And the next thing that we can look at is motivational interviewing. You can find more information about this in your textbook, and it's very much based on client-centered approaches. For example, WIC has adopted motivational interviewing, and they use this thing called your valuable enhanced nutritional assessment. It's all about assessing how to help individuals to get where they want or need by using motivational interviewing techniques. Basically, the principles can actually be summarized as RULE, which is to resist, understand, listen, and empower. It involves urging clients to confront their needs for change, understanding and proceeding in a non-judgmental way, listening and expressing empathy, and empowering and also supporting self-efficacy. You want clients to come up with their own changes. For instance, when I was working with the indigenous population in Malaysia, we discussed how to reduce their salt intake due to their predisposition of high blood pressure. And it was challenging because they love using salt for flavor. But we had to help them understand the importance of reducing it. So we kind of organized cooking classes to show them alternatives and let them determine what changes they wanted to make. Because a lot of times, they say that all they want to do is to make sure that their food tastes good. And generally speaking, there are not many herbs and not many spices that are available in the tropical forest. And so that's why they kind of compensate for that by using sodium. And listening and expressing empathy can be really tough, especially when dealing with younger kids who love junk food. But offering them options kind of empowers them to make healthier choices. So it's all about empowering marginalized communities to change their behavior and positively impact future generations. While it's a long process, seeing community members make positive changes is incredibly rewarding. Next, we have the social ecological model, which addresses behavioral change at multiple levels with a focus on the interrelationship between behavior and the environment. It identifies the 5 levels of influence for health behavior, which are individual, interpersonal, institutions and organizations, community, structure, policies, and systems. So there are supplementary readings available for this topic, and you can examine how the individual, interpersonal relationships, institutions, organizations, communities, and larger structure like policies and systems influence behavior. And this is something that's been used a lot, policy systems and environmental change. And I do have somebody coming to talk about that in the later part of the lecture. So consider the groups you're presenting to and how these concepts will actually impact them, examining the various stages involved. And when we look at the intrapersonal factors, we consider individual characteristics such as knowledge, beliefs, and self-concepts. So most of the time when we discuss promotion, we focus on this personal level. It's essential to understand how these factors will affect individuals. Moving from intrapersonal to interpersonal processes, we consider primary groups and the individual's social environment. This includes how individual behavior can influence family, friends, and peers, and how it all kind of like expands outward. And finally, we can look into the institutional and organizational factors. And this involves understanding how behavioral change interact with one another. We can look at workplaces, churches, and other organized social institutions, some of which may have formal or informal policies and structures. For example, workplaces may implement wellness programs driven by the desire for a better work environment. Community factors are also crucial, and we need to examine community norms within specific populations, so considering how our interventions will fit with these norms. For instance, in Green Bay, football is significant, and there's a culture around bars and certain food items like dairy products and beer. So when promoting behavioral change, we must understand these norms and make interventions relatable to the community. And so when kind of looking at, how public policies, it's basically kind of referring to policies or regulations that are concerning healthy practices. And so to kind of facilitate behavioral change, you need all these different components. And to be able to influence the community, the individuals in the family and the social environment, you really do need to understand the community norms in the area that you're working with. So what are some local level policies available here that can motivate people to make changes towards leading healthier lifestyles? And essentially, this mirrors the social ecological model, which encompasses those 5 key factors. Initially, it involves educating communities about reducing obesity and increasing self-confidence. Then we can progress to the next stage, which might involve organizing community walking groups. Regarding institutional change, the focus could be on encouraging workplaces to provide environments that is supportive of health and fitness. At the community level, utilizing social media platforms to promote healthy food access could be beneficial. And finally, legislative policies and fundings aimed at addressing obesity emerge as a really important tool. However, kind of keeping in mind that implementing changes in the community requires careful consideration. Simply detecting when people should or shouldn't do is unlikely to be effective. Instead, engaging stakeholders, understanding their perspectives, and providing options for changes are crucial aspects of successful community interventions. So there are other theories that you can actually go and like explore further if you're interested. We have the theory of reason action, the diffusion of innovation theory, and also the social marketing theory. And another theory that is worth mentioning is the Hout community process, where P stands for process, proceed, and also process, proceed, and proceed. So it's deeply rooted in public health programs encompassing assessments, implementation, evaluation, and also sustainability. And there are also exercises that you need to complete on your Canvas platform. And it's kind of getting you to kind of identify the various models that we talk about. And so use that as a platform to kind of practice what we have learned today. And with that, I'm going to end here.